Hey guys, welcome. It's that time again. And shorts of sorts. It's your man Ren City doing what we do every week. Come back at you with the recap of the sports week. It's been a crazy one, ending it with a short, but starting it as we usually do, honoring the jerseys that coincide with our episode numbers, being episode 68. There was one person that came to mind right away, and we got started at the hockey rink. I'm talking Jaromir Jagr. 52-year-old is he's just been always playing hockey, spanning the globe. He's played 37 professional seasons. That's how old I am. He's been playing hockey since I've been alive. He was the first Czechoslovak player, as they were called. The as we've talked on this show, Czechoslovakia has become Czech Republic, the Czechia. It's changed, but regardless, when he came along, it was Czechoslovakia, and he was drafted fifth overall in the 1990 NHL draft by the Pittsburgh Penguins, pretty much as the Iron Curtain was falling in the Soviet Union, which gave Jagr a chance to come over to North America and suit up right away, making his debut at 18 years old and having an immediate impact. All rookie team honors his first season. He joined forces with Super Mario Lemieux, who we just talked about in episode 66, bringing back-to-back Stanley Cup championships to Pittsburgh, 91 over the Minnesota North Stars, 92 over the Blackhawks. Jagr oozed charisma and was one of the more popular players in the NHL, winning his first Art Ross trophy for most points in a lockout short 94-95 season, the first of 5 in his career, all with the Penguins. He put up big numbers and did great things in Pittsburgh, but the team could not return to that early Stanley Cup winning ways of the beginning of his career. And as talked about in Lemieux's jersey mentioned in episode 66, he returned to the Penguins after time away, which pumped up the NHL, but did ruffle the feathers a bit between him and Jagr, and to the point so much where Jagr was shipped to the Washington Capitals, where he then signed the largest contract in NHL history. But despite that huge contract, the Capitals' success would drop off a bit, and Jagr's numbers would not line up with the best in the league. He did have a resurgence when the Caps reunited Jagr with Robert Lang, but with all that high-priced talent, the Capitals, they'd fall short of their goals, leading to Jagr going on the move again, this time to the Rangers, where he didn't get too long to show off his skills before another NHL lockout, where Jagr would go back to Czechia and play in Russia a bit until the lockout ended. He'd come back to New York and barely missed out on the Art Ross and the Rocket Richard. However, he did win the Lester B. Pearson Award for the third time in his career, which is awarded to the best player in the league voted by their peers. And after becoming a free agent, Jagr was informed the Rangers weren't looking to resign him, and he didn't like his NHL options, so boom, he went to the KHL, spending a few seasons playing in Russia, where he was unfortunately right next to 19-year-old Alexei Cherepanov. The former first-round pick of the Rangers died in a game against Vityaz Chekhov in 2004. A tragedy, and after some time, Jagr showed interest in returning to the NHL. He chose the original NHL team he played for, their in-state rival, the Philadelphia Flyers. Started a carousel of teams for Jagr. He played for the Flyers before joining the Stars. Because of another lockout, he'd go back home. Once that lockout ended, he's been through a few lockouts. He'd return to the Stars before getting moved to the Bruins, where Jagr was part of the team that made it to the 2013 Stanley Cup Finals, where Jagr set a new NHL record for a gap in between Stanley Cup appearances, 21 years from one to the other, surpassing the record of 19, which Gary Roberts held. After that season, Jagr would sign to join the Devils, having a 2-year tenure in New Jersey, where he became the oldest player to register a hat trick at 42 years and 322 days, passing the record held by a former Detroit Red Wing, Nicholas Lidstrom. Jagr would then get traded to the Panthers, where he'd play 3 seasons, and after his time in Florida, Jagr joined the Calgary Flames on a 1-year deal. He said he'd always wanted to play for a Canadian team, so he was finally able to do it at the young age of 46, but injuries finally started catching up with Jagr, and he'd spend some time in the AHL with the Flames affiliate Stockton Heat, but Jagr would end his time in Calgary, where he'd leave North America, going back to Czechia to play with Kladno. He played a few seasons there, and this past season, at 52 years and 63 days, Jagr scored to become the oldest player to ever score a goal in a professional competition, breaking the record held by Gordie Howe, who had scored the last goal of his professional career at 52 years and 6 days. Like, this is an insane long career for Jaromir Jagr, which I guess isn't even ended yet. He's still not technically retired, but what a career. Just sticking with NHL numbers, like I mentioned, back-to-back Stanley Cup wins, 3 Lester B. Pearson Awards, 5 Art Ross. He's made 13 All-Star games. In '99, he won the lone Hart Trophy of his career for the MVP with the Penguins. Jagr's also represented his country on numerous occasions. Like I said, it's changed their name a few times. When he was representing the country, it was Czechoslovakia and Czech Republic, and he hasn't suited up for 2015. But he won a bronze medal at the World Juniors, bronze medal World Championships. He's won 2 gold medals and a bronze at the World Championships, and a bronze at the World Cup, and 2 Olympic medals, gold at the '98 Nagano Olympics and bronze at the 2006 Turin Olympics. And the reason he wears number 68 stems from his home country. He wears it to honor the Prague Spring, which was an act of revolution from his native country. It's also the same year his grandfather passed away in prison, so some significant meanings to that number for him. And Jagr sits second all-time in NHL points with 1,921, only behind the great one, Wayne Gretzky, who he's still quite a bit behind. Gretzky retired with 2,857. Jagr sits 4th all-time in goals and is the NHL career leader in game-winning goals with 135, 14 ahead of second-place Alexander Ovechkin and Gordie Howe at 121. And that's just a sample of the NHL records Jaromir Jagr possesses. He holds many with the Penguins and even has some with the Rangers. One of the best to play, and like I said, still kicking it over there. Not a lot of other big names jump out from the NHL. You know, you're in the shadow of number 68, Jaromir Jagr. But the last mention I'll have from there is definitely worth the shout out. I'm talking about current NHLer Mike Hoffman. He started in the OHL, but moved to the QMJHL where he joined the Gatineau Olympics. He only played a few games there before moving to Drummondville, where he put up big numbers, leading to the Ottawa Senators selecting him 130th in the 2009 NHL draft. After getting drafted, he'd go back to play some more time in the minor leagues before getting that big call-up. But when he was in the minor leagues with the St. John Sea Dogs, he was an all-star and won the league's MVP. And once he got called up to the Senators, he played a bit with the AHL team, the Bingham Senators. But once he got regular time, he was really good. He was lighting it up with the Senators and really fitting in. But as mentioned in episode 65, when I was talking about Erik Karlsson, Mike Hoffman's fiance, Monica Carrick, was harassing Karlsson to the point where she had to file a order of protection against her. The abuse began after Carrick became offended that Melinda Karlsson stopped liking her online posts and inviting to her events, and the abuse stemmed from wishing Karlsson would get injured on the ice to even talking about the death of their stillborn child. Like, some harsh shit. And this led to Hoffman swiftly getting moved to the Sharks. Then he moved to the Panthers, and he had a good stint there, but the offseason he joined the Blues on a 1-year deal. After that, he played with the Canadiens, and prior to last season, he was traded to the Penguins on a 3-year deal with the Sharks, but ended up getting back to the Sharks, which is where he played last season. His best numbers were in Ottawa, but that shit went down between the Wags, really changed the trajectory of his career, to be fair. We'll leave the hockey rink, go to the gridiron, starting with our first 68, who, you guessed it, played offensive line. Guy played his entire career with one franchise, the Kansas City Chiefs legend Will Shields. Played college football with Nebraska Cornhuskers, where he wore 75, but during his time there, he was a beast. Second team All-Big 8. First team All-Big 8 selections, back-to-back seasons, plus a second team All-American and a unanimous All-American nod. In that senior season, he also won the Outland Trophy for best offensive lineman in college. Despite those accolades, he fell to the 3rd round of the '93 draft where the Chiefs selected him, and from the get-go, he was in the peak of excellence there on the line. He'd earn all rookie team honors his inaugural season, making the first of 12 consecutive Pro Bowls. And during that time, he was named 3-team first-team All-Pro, 4-team second All-Pro. Great reputation off the field, winning the Walter Payton Man of the Year in 2003. With Shields on the offensive line, Marcus Allen, Priest Holmes, and Larry Johnson all at 1,000-yard rushing seasons. And he blocked for 4,000-yard passes, too. Elvis Gerbach, remember that name, did it once, and Trent Green did it 3 times. Shields never missed a game in his 14 seasons in the NFL and showed up for work every day. An underrated guard in the scheme of all-time greats. I think he needs to be mentioned more up there. He was named to the Pro and College Football Hall of Fame, to NFL 2000's All-Decade Team. The Chiefs honored him by putting them in their Hall of Fame as well. His alma mater, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, retired the 75 he wore there. He's one of only 16 players to have that honor. A real great player who, like I said, I don't think gets enough credit. But the next 68 on our list, as you figured, from the offensive line. And although he wore 52 briefly to start his career, this is a 68 that deserves mentioning. I'm talking about center Kevin Mawae. He went to LSU to play for the Tigers, and he played all over. He played offensive tackle, guard, long snapper on special teams. After his sophomore season, where he played 3 different positions, left guard, center, and left tackle, he earned first team All-SEC. The following 2 seasons at LSU, he earned second team All-SEC, which led to the Seahawks selecting him 36th overall in the second round of the 94 draft, which was the highest draft pick for an LSU Tiger since Bo Strange in 61. There have been plenty since then, though. And after his first few seasons in the NFL where he played guard, he made all-rookie team, and he'd shift to the center, which is where he'd play the rest of his career. The following offseason, he'd signed with the New York Jets, where he started wearing the 68 to get on this episode. And his first season in the Big Apple, the Jets averaged the 4th best offense and controlled the ball the 3rd best in the league. He had such an impact on the line. He was at center for Curtis My Favorite Martin, setting a franchise rushing record for 800-yard rushing games in a row. That'd be Kevin Mawae's first Pro Bowl season, and with the Jets, he'd make 6 Pro Bowls, 1 second-team All-Pro, and 5 first-team All-Pros. He had an Ironman streak going, but that was snapped when he picked up a serious triceps injury and missed the rest of the season. And after that season, he was released by the Jets. He wasn't a free agent long, though. He joined the Tennessee Titans and had an immediate impact on their offensive line, improving their offensive numbers across the board. And during his time with the Titans, he'd make 2 more Pro Bowls, 2 more first-team All-Pro selections while becoming the captain of the team. And after 16 seasons in the NFL, he'd call it a career with the Titans. And in retirement, he was named the NFL 2000's All-Decade Team. Much like the before-mentioned Will Shields, Kevin Mawae had his bust in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In retirement, he's thrown his hat in the coaching, being an assistant with the Bears, Arizona State, and the Colts. And he became the head coach of Lipscomb Academy Football. But in November of last year, he and the school came to mutually agreed to part ways. His coaching career hasn't lived up to his playing days, but Kevin Mawae, one of the best centers of his generation, I think that's fair to say. Another offensive lineman that donned the 68 most of his career, other than that 64 brief time, is Joe Delamiller. He played college football at MSU, earning second-team All-Big Ten, followed by back-to-back first-team All-Big Tens, where he was also a second-team All-American, leading to the Buffalo Bills selecting Delamiller in the first round of the 73 NFL Draft. There was initial scare about a potential irregular heartbeat issue, but once he got clearance, he was good to go. A very important piece of that offensive line known as the Electric Company in Buffalo, which blocked for, you'll remember from episode 32, O.J. Simpson to the first ever 2,000-yard season. The juice was on the loose, and Delamiller was a big part of that. O.J. Simpson would pick up huge numbers and win MVP, where Delamiller had made 6 Pro Bowl appearances, making 7 All-Pro selections. And in 1980, he'd get traded to the Browns, where he would not miss a game over 5 years, and he'd earn his 8th and final Pro Bowl selection. Or All-Pro selection, sorry. And with the Browns, Delamiller would block for an MVP quarterback, Brian Sipe. And in the process, he became the first player to block for a 2,000-yard rusher and a 4,000-yard rusher. Since then, Jackie Slater, Doug Smith, Irv Pankey, Kevin Glover, and Tom Nalen from episode 66 have done that. Joe Delamiller would return to the Bills for his last season and have a brief stint with the Charlotte Rage of the Arena Football League. That was just a blip on his resume. He was honored by the Bills, getting named to their 50th anniversary team. He was inducted to their Wall of Fame. And the Bills didn't just honor him. The Browns put them in their Ring of Honor. Joe Delamiller was also named to the 1970s All-Decade Team and later inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In retirement, Delamiller has also battled for the rights of retired players. He battled with Gene Upshaw, who you may remember from episode 63, about getting retired players looked after better. And he was one of the first living NFL players to be tested and diagnosed with CTE. And you might remember him if you've watched the Academy Award-winning documentary, O.J. Made in America. He makes a cameo in that. Talk about the juice. But We'll go keep this train going to another 68 who played his entire professional football career with one franchise, Washington Redskins legend Russ Grimm. Got a scholarship to play at the University of Pitt. However, the team was filled with linebackers, and Grimm just wanted to play. So he said, I volunteer to play center. He put on some weight over his 4 years, going from 205 to 270, playing with some future NFL stars, including blocking for future Hall of Famer Dan Marino. Excuse me. His great play in college led to Washington drafting him in the third round of the 81 NFL draft. Upon joining Washington, Grimm would become one of the founding members of the Hogs offensive line. I mentioned that all-time offensive line in episode 66 when I mentioned Joe Jacoby, who I still think should be in the Hall of Fame. But with Grimm a part of that line, the Redskins had tons of success, making it to 4 Super Bowls and winning 3 of them. Super Bowl 17 over the Dolphins, Super Bowl 22 over the Broncos, and Super Bowl 26 over the Bills. Russ Grimm played guard, but he could fit anywhere on the line when asked to. Grimm would make 4 Pro Bowl appearances, 4 first-team All-Pros, 1980s All-Decade Team, and one of the 80 greatest Redskins. Russ Grimm would get inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame following his playing days, where he would then dip his toes in the coaching as well. Starting off as a tight end coach with Washington before becoming their offensive line coach, he'd move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he'd be part of their coaching staff as, again, an offensive line coach. And he was a member of the Super Bowl 40 winning team when the Steelers beat the Seahawks. Grimm would go in the same role with the Cardinals and then the Titans before retiring from coaching in 2017. From retired players to a current one, this 68's played his entire career with one franchise thus far. Talking about Detroit Lions offensive tackle Taylor Decker. He played college football with the Ohio State Buckeyes, where he earned a starting job his sophomore season, and he'd moved to left tackle from there, and he was an absolute unit, earning second team All Big Ten, where the Buckeyes won the national championship. The following season, he earned first team All Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year, and an All-American selection. That led to the Lions drafting Decker 16th overall, where after signing a deal to join the team, he'd start all 16 games as a rookie, making the all-rookie team. He's got the big responsibility of keeping the freshly paid Jared Goff safe, and he's in the last year of his contract, so it'll be interesting to see what the Lions do with the big man going forward. This upcoming season could be tryouts to see for his next contract. Wrapping up the NFL portion of the 68 mentions, we go to a current player who's only suited up for one team in the NFL. I'm talking about Australian offensive tackle Jordan Mailata. He grew up playing rugby and became a professional rugby player. His play piqued the interest of football executives in the U.S., and Mailata was invited to try out for the International Player Pathway Program, where he admitted he'd never really watched American football, and the only game he'd watch would be the Super Bowl. But he went to the IMG Academy in Florida to train under the supervision of Aiden Durd. While there, he was scouted by Eagles offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland, who Mailata credits for making him the player he is today. And during the process of the NFL draft, many scouts looked at him as a low-end prospect, saying his inexperience would hold him back, and, he had never played a down in college football, so you can understand the skepticism. Others pointed out, though, to his insane physical traits, like 6'8" stature, not a lot of body fat, and the Eagles, who had already had their eye on him through Stoutland, selected the Australian in the 7th round of the 2018 draft. And in the process, he became just the second player to be selected with no American high school or college experience. The first being German Moritz Boehringer in 2016, who never made it past the practice squad. So Mailata had some adversity. He dealt with some early injury issues, and struggling to grasp the NFL playbook. It's a lot different than coming from rugby, but he overcame these early injury troubles. He's become a fan favorite in Philly. He was a member of the offensive line that helped get the Eagles to Super Bowl 57, where they did fall to the Chiefs. Earlier this year, the Eagles signed Mailata to a contract extension that keeps him through the 2028 season. And he's also surprised people with his singing voice, appearing on The Masked Singer. So a lot going on with the Aussie there. We'll leave the gridiron for the baseball diamond, starting with the relief pitcher, whose jersey I'm wearing right now. Romano, you can see it there on my hunchback there, my Quasimodo style. But Jordan Romano grew up in Markham, Ontario. Excelled in sports, baseball, basketball, soccer, volleyball. He did it all. He'd go undrafted out of high school, but he'd go to Connors State College, where he'd get to the National Junior College Athletic Association World Series. That's a mouthful. Following that season, he transferred to Oral Roberts University, where he'd lead the Toronto Blue Jays, drafting Romano in the 10th round of the 2014 draft, where he played in the minor league system before picking up a UCL injury that required Tommy John surgery. You'd rehab from that, get back in the pitching, where still not getting the call up, you'd get chosen by the White Sox in the Rule 5 draft, where he was immediately shifted to the Rangers before finding his way back to the Blue Jays. Full circle journey to Toronto, where Romano would finally get his call up. Excuse me, and his great relief pitching led to him becoming the Blue Jays closer. And in that role, he'd make 2 straight All-Star appearances. And this season's been a bit of a struggle for Romano. His pitching wasn't too great. Then he dealt with some elbow inflammation, which has put him on the injured list. It looked like he was nearing a return, but he's going to be out longer. It's such a buzz, Killington. I hope he can get back healthy and get back to his old pitching ways. Like I said, I'm wearing this jersey right now. That was part of the giveaway in the first 15,000 people that showed up. Where I, on one of our previous episodes, talked about a short where the Karen tried to sneak in and get jerseys. It was a good time, but we actually got to watch the Jays win, which, as we'll get to later, hasn't been a common theme this year. But we'll go from a reliever to a starter. The next 68 on our list is 26-year-old right-hander George Kirby. The New York native got some attention to join Elon University, which is why he fell to the Mets in the 32nd round, and it was because, well, is he going to play college ball or not? He ended up playing college ball, which led to him increasing his draft stock, where he'd go 20th overall in the 2019 MLB draft. And he got some minor league time in before the COVID-19 pandemic canceled season prevented any more time. But he'd get back into it, and a few months into his time in the minor leagues, he'd get his big call-up. And then, during a game, he'd set an MLB record by throwing 24 consecutive strikes to start the game. That's awesome. The previous record was Joe Musgrove in 2018 with 21 strikes to start the game. And after more successes throughout the season, he'd finish 6th in the AL Rookie of the Year voting. And the following season, he'd earn his first All-Star selection. Kirby's had a decent season thus far for the division-leading Mariners, and I'm expecting to see him improve throughout the season and make another All-Star game potentially. We'll see. I don't know. They did just make the announcements of the starters, which we'll also get to later. But one more quick MLB mention. How about 68 for the Oakland A's? Joey Estes, 22-year-old, threw a complete game shutout last night against the Angels. 9 strong, striking out 4, and only giving up a few hits. Good on you, sir. And not trying to sound like a broken record here, but there have not been a lot of NBA players in the 60s, and nobody has worn the 68 in an NBA game thus far. So any new rookies looking to make a name for yourself, the 68's available. A lot of jerseys in the 68 that you might not have thought of, but you got to give the most love to Yager there. He's probably the one that sticks out the most. But hey, we'll get to the sports. The Euro Cup, one of the biggest events in the world. It's been wild, and since last episode, shit has gone down. The last group games we had Group E. Slovakia took on Romania in their final match. They'd opened the scoring the 24th minute. His Duda's header made it 1-0 for Slovakia after 24 minutes. Romania's Hadji would get taken down in the box, resulting in a penalty where Marin would step up and bury the goal, and it was a tie game, and that's how it ended. Ukraine took on Belgium at the same time as that other match, and Belgium would own most of the possession, but each team would just get a few shots, and this uneventful game led to a scoreless draw. Those scorelines resulted in all 4 teams finishing on 4 points in the group. Romania won the group with the most goals with the best goal differential. Belgium finished second in the group. Just crazy. Ukraine finished with 4 points and didn't get out. It's mind-blowing to me. But anyway, we'll get some more on that. In Group F, Georgia took on unbeaten Portugal, who had already punched their ticket to the knockout stage, hoping for a win to keep their Euro Cup dreams alive. And what a start. After picking the ball up at half, Georgia went on a run and spotted Kvaratskhelia, and the Napoli man finished wonderfully, giving Georgia a surprising 1-0 lead, not even 2 minutes into the match. Portugal had tons of chances, but Georgia still led 1-0 at half. In the second half, Georgia would earn a penalty where Georgia Mikatadze would slide one in from the spot, giving Georgia the 2-0 lead after 57 minutes. And despite Portugal having 73% of the ball, they could not score. A stunning victory for Georgia, beating Portugal 2-0. Czechia took on Turkey with both teams hoping for a win. Czechia would have an uphill battle after Antonin Barak picked up his second yellow card in the first 20 minutes, resulting in Czechia going a man down. Czech keeper Stanek made a big save, but the pressure continued where the ball fell to Hakan Çalhanoğlu, who blasted his shot into the net, giving Turkey a 1-0 lead. And despite being a man down, Czechia looked for an equalizer, and they'd get one with some of the West Ham boys. Kufel would take the long throw, and after some chaos, the ball came to Thomas Souček, who blasted the ball into the net, tying the game at 1 after 66 minutes. The game looked destined for a draw, but then in stoppage time, Turkey would go on a run and find Tosin. He was left with too much space, and he'd fire a shot in the corner, putting Turkey ahead for the second time in the match. And they led 2-1 after 94 minutes, and there'd be more frustration for Czechia after the whistle, where Thomas Chori would pick up a direct red card. The game was done, but Chori will face a ban in his next international game in UEFA. And Czechia, they'd fall 2-1. Big win for Turkey. Those results led to Portugal winning the group because of goal differential. They had a slightly better one than Turkey. Georgia finished third in the group, and Czechia would finish bottom of the group. So after those group matches, we had our knockout stage set up. We had the top two teams of each group, and there'd be 4 wild cards advancing as well. 3 teams had advanced with 4 points. The Netherlands snuck out of Group D, Slovakia out of Group E, and Georgia out of Group 5. Slovenia made it with 3 points because they had a better goal differential than Hungary from Group A. Ukraine, like I said, 4 points, did not advance because they were in last in Group E. The group of 4s where everyone finished with 4. That's crazy. They became the first team in history of the Euros to get eliminated with 4 points in the group stage. It's not a record you want to have, but those groups led us to the knockouts. And in the knockout stages, we had Italy take on Switzerland. And the Swiss were the aggressors, always looking to score. And they'd get the opening goal when Ruben Vargas would spot Freyler in the box, and he'd find the back of the net, making it 1-0. And then just seconds into the second half, Ruben Vargas would get the ball inside the box, and he'd curl a stunner into the top corner, doubling Switzerland's lead before the 46-minute mark, giving Vargas a goal and an assist on the game. And that would be it. Switzerland would hold on to win 2-0, eliminating the defending Euro Cup champions. Very disappointment ending for Italy, who didn't really look like they had a chance in this match as Switzerland moved on to the quarterfinals. Host Germany took on Denmark in the round of 16. Minutes into the match, Schlotterbeck looked to open the scoring, but VAR found Kimmich. Kimmich set a little basketball pick to free up the header, and the game stayed 0-0. There'd be a brief stoppage due to lightning, which they had to stop the game, but left for some really cool pictures. And despite Germany's pressure, they couldn't beat Kasper Schmeichel, and the game went in the halftime scoreless. But minutes into the second half, Joachim Andersen looked to open the scoring for Denmark, but he was in an offside position, and it was disallowed. This would prove costly, as moments later, Andersen would get the ball off his hand in the box, leading to a penalty opportunity where Kai Havertz beat Schmeichel to make it 1-0 Germany after 53 minutes. And Denmark were pressing, leaving themselves open in the back where Jamal Musiala would get the ball and he'd make it 2-0. Schmeichel made huge saves to keep the game close, and the Germans would have another goal disallowed, but Germany would hold on to the 2-0 win, advancing to the quarterfinals. And a little bit of a buzzkill for broadcasting fans. Clive Tyldesley, he's been an iconic voice on many big events in footy, is ending his 28-year tenure with ITV as a broadcaster. One of the best to do it. Much love to Clive there. England and Slovakia. Come on, England! There was a quarterfinal matchup between England and Slovakia that started out physical. 4 yellow cards, 3 from England in the first 17 minutes of the match. Then out of nowhere, Slovakia would have the ball in a dangerous spot. Some terrible marking led to Ivan Schranz finding himself open and beating Jordan Pickford. And Slovakia led 1-0 after 25 minutes. Coming in the second half, England looked inspired. Trippier would almost hit his cross, but the ball would come to Phil Foden, who knocked into the net. But replay showed Foden was offside and the goal was disallowed, keeping the score at 1-0. With 10 minutes left in the match, Declan Rice tried a shot from outside the box, hit the post, and it was staying 1-0. You felt like England was done here. There would be some late game substitutions, and then the 94th minute, things were looking grim. They picked up a corner where Mark Gahey headed the corner on, where Jude Bellingham pulled off a wonderful over-the-head kick, tying the game at 1 at 95 minutes, sending the game to extra time. That's why my hair is thinning, folks, for cheering for England. The momentum was totally swung. In like a minute in the extra time, they'd get another corner. The ball would be headed on by substitute Ivan Toney, right in the path of Harry Kane, and his header found the back of the net. England led 2-1. In mere minutes, England went from the brink of elimination to being up 2-1 in extra time. Slovakia always equalized late, but just barely missed the net, and you knew England was ready to park the bus going into the second half of extra time as Southgate took off Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane. So you're like, I really hope this doesn't go to penalties. But the park bus held on, and England pulled off the 2-1 victory, advancing to the quarterfinals, leaving fans with heart issues throughout. Spain took on Georgia as Georgia was trying to keep their Cinderella run going. They spread the field out wide, leading to Cabedze sending a dangerous cross to Kvaratskhelia, and in the process, it hit Lenormand and it ricocheted in his own net, giving Georgia the surprising 1-0 lead after 18 minutes. But you knew Spain wasn't going to take easy to that, and they ramped up the pressure where the ball came to Rodri outside the box, and he's done what he's done for so many times for Manchester City, and that's fire one in from long distance, and it was tied at 1 after 39 minutes. VAR had to double check that it was good, and it counted. And then early in the second half of the game, tied at 1, Spain got a dangerous free kick, forcing a big save out of Marmashvili, but off the rebound, the ball came to 16-year-old Lamine Yamal, who found Fabian Ruiz, knocked the ball in the net, 2-1 Spain. They went from 1-0 down to 2-1 up. Lamine Yamal's cross, the 16-year-old was everywhere. His cross into the Georgian area was played out. He was called offsides, didn't count. The decision didn't phase Spain. They kept up the attack. They'd finish off with Nico Williams finding the back of the net with a rocket goal. The 21-year-old for Athletic Bilbao has had a great season, and it looks like it's continuing. They'd add a fourth where Dani Olmo made a brilliant move before curling his shot into the net. Big 4-1 win for Georgia, but Georgia has to be proud of the way they played this tournament. France took on Belgium in the Battle of Titans, and the first half wouldn't have many chances. Second half, it started to open up a bit. Kevin De Bruyne found a good spot, but he hit it right at the keeper. And just minutes later, it would backfire. As Romelu Lukaku lost the ball for Belgium, he was like, dude, WTF, and kind of stopped playing. As the play continued, the ball found its way to Kolo Muani. He swiveled and took a shot where it greasy ricocheted off Belgian defender Jan Vertonghen, and it found the back of the net, giving France the 1-0 lead after 85 minutes. And that's how the game would end. France moves on to the quarterfinals with their lead scorer being own goals. So it's just wild to think how far they've made it. And they haven't played their best by any means, but we'll see what happens when they go forward. And for Belgium, geez, you got to wonder about this golden generation. They have guys that light it up at the club level, but when it comes together for Belgium, they're like Belgian melted chocolate. But we'll see what happens with the international team going forward with the World Cup just a few years away. Portugal and Slovenia in a round of 16 match. This was all Portugal. They looked on the brink of scoring the whole time. 72% of the ball. Took 5 times as many shots, but we'd have no goals after 90 minutes. We go to extra time. Diogo Jota would go on a run, getting taken down in the box, resulting in a penalty chance for Portugal. Who would step up? Cristiano Ronaldo. Everybody knew it would be him. And he'd aim for the corner, but he'd get denied by Atletico Madrid's Jan Oblak. The fantastic save by a fantastic keeper. You can see how much it meant to CR7 as tears streamed down his face. And in the second half of extra time, Portugal's Pepe stumbled, giving Slovenian striker Benjamin Sesko a great opportunity. But Portugal's keeper, Diogo Costa, a huge save to keep zeros on the board. And because of that, we'd go to penalties, where Slovenia would shoot first. Ilisic's shot would be denied by Diego Costa. Cristiano Ronaldo wanted the first shot, and he blasted in, beating All Black, making up for his first miss. Second shooter for Slovenia, Balkovic, he'd face a similar fate, and his shot was denied by Diogo Costa. Bruno Fernandes stood up and flat-footed All Black with a crafty penalty. Slovenia's third shot taker, Verbic, he stepped up. Another stop for Diego Costa. The first time a keeper's made 3 saves in a shootout at the Euros. He turned into a wall briefly, leading the Portugal's third shot taker, Bernardo Silva, and he found the corner of the net. 3-0 win on penalties. Big win for Portugal as they squeezed by. But give it up to Slovenia. They left it all out on the pitch. Big matchup between Romania and the Netherlands. The Dutch had more of the ball to start the match, and they go from passing it around at half to suddenly being on the attack, where Cody Gakpo made an excellent move before finding the back of the net, and the Netherlands led 1-0 after 20 minutes. To start the second half, the Netherlands took Steven Bergwijn off for Daniel Malen, and what a turn of events that turned to be. Gakpo scored from a corner, but it showed Gakpo was offsides. They took it off. But a little bit later, Gakpo managed to save the ball from going out, where he'd find substitute Malen, who easily found the back of the net, doubling the Dutch lead after 83 minutes. And late, Romania threw caution to the wind, and it led to a counterattack where Malen would get his second half brace. 3-0 win for Netherlands. But man, Cody Gakpo, he looks like a totally different player. I mentioned how Belgian players kind of suffered a bit when they suit up rather than club footy. Gakpo, I wouldn't say his year was lights out for Liverpool, but if he plays like this, holy Jiminy Jillikers. Anywho, the last round of 16 match between Austria and Turkey. Turkey would go on the attack to start the game, earning a corner kick in the first 45 seconds, where from that corner, the ball hit the post before the keeper scooped it out, right to Turkish Demiral, who smashed it into the net, giving Turkey the 1-0 lead, not even a minute into the match. And 14 minutes into the second half, Turkey would get another corner. There'd be some Austrian confusion before the kick, and as the ball entered the box, Demiral out-jumped everyone, heading it into the back of the net, and after 59 minutes, Turkey was up 2-0. Austria needed to respond, and 7 minutes later, they'd get their goal, putting on pressure, winning a corner. From the corner, Michael Gregorich would deflect the ball into the net, and 66 minutes in, we had a 2-1 game. The game got nervy near the end, with Austria looking for the equalizer. They were left open, where Patrick Pence made a huge save to keep Austria still in it. And very deep in the stoppage time, Austria got a free header in the box, forcing an outrageous save by Turkish keeper Mert Günok. Probably the save of the tournament so far. And that 94th minute save was enough to preserve the 2-1 win for Turkey as they go on to the quarterfinals. But it is said the UEFA is investigating scorer Mary Demiral for his goal selection. He held his fingers up in what looked like the Wolfpack gesture from the NW days in WCW. Don't turn your back on the Wolfpack. But apparently that's not what this one is. This is a gesture used by an ultra-nationalist group. Not as fun. So we'll see what comes out of this story in the next few days. That round of 16 brings us to the quarterfinals as this tournament is getting closer to an end. So now we enter this stage on Friday, July 5th. There are some matches of some of the world's best. Spain take on Germany in a match that seems fit for a final. I know Spain has looked lights out in this tournament despite going down 1-0 earlier to Georgia, but I feel the host nation, Germany, is going to come out triumphant in this one. Do not expect a scoreless 90 minutes in this one. Goals, goals, goals! Look for 21-year-old German Jamal Musiala to at least get one as the youngsters in the running for the Golden Boot. You have Portugal taking on France that same day. The iconic figure of Cristiano Ronaldo still looking for his first goal of the tournament, facing the new masked face of Real Madrid, Kylian Mbappe. Both of these teams have made it to the stage despite not playing their best yet. And I'm thinking whoever hits their peak first wins this game. And I think much like Messi and Argentina in the World Cup final, I have France losing this one too. Saturday, July 6th. Got some doozies here. May not have as much hype as the Friday games, but this one should be good. Switzerland taking on England. And don't cut out the Swiss team. They've looked fantastic this tournament. They made Italy look pretty bad in the round of 16. England has been carrying the weight of never winning a Euros, despite a lot of times being the favorite, but they cannot overlook this Swiss team. We all know about Granit Xhaka. He played great in Arsenal, leading them almost on a title run before he left to join Bayer Leverkusen just to go undefeated the entire Bundesliga season. So England need to play a little freer and create some opportunities. Their best moments in that late win against Slovenia was when Ivan Toney came on and they were forced to go for it. Let's see some more of that urgency out of Gareth Southgate here. I'm interested to see what starting 11 he throws out against the Swiss, but regardless, I have England getting by Switzerland. Come on, England! The other matchup features the Netherlands and Turkey. Turkey were able to squeeze by Austria with some great goals by Demiral, who I said is getting investigated, and they could very well shock the Dutch in the quarterfinals. Like a suit of rubber, I do not see this shock coming. The Netherlands are looking good right now. Cody Gakpo, who I mentioned, he's got his eyes on the Golden Boot. I know the Netherlands lost to Austria in group play, and Turkey just knocked out Austria, but I don't think that scheduling math is going to work out in Turkey's way here. I have the Dutch winning the match. The big wild card could be Turkish goalkeeper Günok, who I said I still can't believe that last-minute save he made over Austria. He could be the difference maker in this one. So with the semifinals going down next week, I have Germany beating Spain, Portugal beating France, setting up a Germany-Portugal semifinal, juicy, and the other semifinal between England, who will beat Switzerland, come on England, and the Netherlands, who I have beating Turkey, or eating Turkey, who knows, we'll see what happens in that one. But from that part of the world to this part of the world, the Western Hemisphere, the Copa America. You had some games wrapping up here. Yeah, Ecuador and Jamaica. Ecuador was coming into this game against Jamaica looking to avenge the opening loss of the tournament. They get an early cross that looked to get deflected. Was initially given an own goal, but it was then given to Ecuador's Hinchape. Ecuador led 1-0 after 13 minutes. They looked to double it up at halftime when a handball in the box led to Paez stepping up from the spot and burying it, doubling the lead going into halftime. Early in the second half, some history for Jamaica. Corner kick led to a scramble, and West Ham's Mikel Antonio would find the back of the net. Jamaica's first ever Copa America goal, so congrats to that hammer there. Making it 2-1 after 54 minutes. The Jamaicans looked for an equalizer and came close, but it did leave them open in the back, where in the 91st minute, Alan Minda put the game on ice with a goal to make it 3-1 for Ecuador. Venezuela and Mexico. Mexico were coming in looking for a big match against Venezuela for a big result, but the first half would bring us no goals. Early in the second half, Venezuela went on the attack, and Aaron Burro was taken down in the box by Mexico's Quinones. This gave Venezuela a penalty where Salomon Rondon scored, getting it 1-0 after 57 minutes. And despite tons of Mexican pressure, they could not find the equalizer. Another big win for Venezuela in this tournament. Panama took on USA in an early red card by Timothy Weah. He just basically hit the guy in the head. Shouldn't have reacted that way. I know they can get under your skin, but you can't just hit someone in the head. But despite being down a man early in the match, USA would score. Balogun scored a beauty off the post with his left foot, and US led 1-0 after 22 minutes. Panama equalized just 4 minutes later. Cesar Blackman would score his first ever Panama goal, beating Matthew Turner along the ground, which I don't think USA manager Greg Berhalter liked, because after halftime, Turner subbed off for American keeper Ethan Horvath to play the rest of the game. Panama pressure led to substitute Ayarza crossing it with a pace, resulting in a perfect finish by Jose Vajardo. Tempers were flaring near the end of the game, and Carrasquilla picked up a direct red for a dirty foul on Pulisic, which prompted Pulisic to jump up and go after who I feel was fair. That was a dirty play. More yellow cards were handed up. The game would end 10-10. U.S. had chances but could not find the back of the net. Massive win for Panama as they take it 2-1. Uruguay took on Bolivia, and this was very one-sided. Palestri opened the scoring up for Uruguay in the 8th minute, and it just continued from there. Liverpool's Darwin Nunez would double the lead in the 21st with a nice finish. The second half, we got 3 goals in a 12-minute window. Maximiliano Araujo would have his shot trickle in the net, followed by Valverde's goal in the 81st, and then Uruguayan substitute Bentancur would add a 5th off a free kick with a massive dominant game there, and Bolivia had no chance as they would fall 5-0. Colombia took on Costa Rica, and Costa Rica knew they had a tough battle ahead of them, and they kept Colombia off the scoreboard most of the first half, but around the half-hour mark, Costa Rican keeper Seguera would take out an attacking Colombian, resulting in a penalty chance where Liverpool's Luis Diaz would smash his penalty in the net, giving Colombia the 1-0 lead after 31 minutes. In the 59th minute, Davison Sanchez would double Colombia's lead from a corner. 3 minutes later, Jean Cordoba would get the long ball and make it 3-0. Big win for Colombia over Costa Rica. Paraguay took on Brazil in an exciting match. Brazil would get an early penalty where a handball was in the box, and West Ham's Lucas Paqueta would step up and miss the penalty chance. And it didn't faze Brazil much, as Vinicius Jr. would score a lovely goal off a lovely build-up, giving Brazil the 1-0 lead after 35 minutes. And 8 minutes later, a save by Paraguay was mishandled in the box and right into the path of Savio, who doubled the Brazilian league. Paraguay was just trying to make it to halftime, but in the first half stoppage time, Vinicius Jr. would get a brace, making it 3-0 at the break. 3 minutes into the second half, Paraguay brought some excitement to their fan base, where Alderete scored a beauty from outside the box, making it 3-1. Brazil will get another penalty where West Ham's Paqueta would make up for his initial miss to make it 4-1. Things got worse for Paraguay as Cubas would get a straight red card for a very bad tackle. Big 4-1 win for Brazil. And then we had our wrap-up games in the groups. How did the group stages end at Copa? Well, let me tell you. Group A came to an end with some big-time matches. Argentina versus Peru was not one of them. Argentina dominated possession, 75% of the ball. Second half brace from Inter Milan's Lautaro Martinez. He scored in the 47th and again in the 86th. Easy 2-0 victory for Argentina. The current World Cup holders won all 3 of their group games, scoring 5, not allowing 1. And Lautaro Martinez leads the race for the Golden Boot in the Copa America with 4 goals in the group stage. Canada took on Chile in one of the biggest games in Canadian men's footy history. Chile had tons of pressure on them as well, as they were still looking for their first goal in group play. And Canada caught a break when Gabriel Suazo would pick up 2 early yellow cards. While already on a yellow card, he was beaten on a long ball by Richie Larea, where he pulled him down, resulting in a 27th minute dismissal. And despite being a man down, Chile created some pretty good chances, forcing Canada's keeper Maxime Crepeau into some big saves. He's been one of Canada's best players this entire tournament. tournament. And the game was hard fought, but ended in a 0-0 draw. We already knew Argentina won the group, but with that scoreless result between Canada and Chile, Canada advanced to the quarterfinals. Like I said, what a moment for Canadian men's footy. So excited to see them get out of the group. For Chile, it's disappointment city. Like I said, they did not register one goal in their 3 games, and the first time they did make it out of the group stages of the Copa America since 2004. Yeah, they cannot be happy. The Chile is cold. Group B, Venezuela took on Jamaica. They were looking, this was the last match of the group. It was an exciting game where we see no goals in the first half. But 4 minutes into the second, Edward Bello's header would find the back of the net, putting Venezuela up 1-0. That goal opened up the game a bit. And just 7 minutes later, Venezuela would spot Rondon, who showed off his strength and touch as his shot snuck by the keeper and trickled in to make it 2-0. Eric Ramirez added a third minutes later, and that's how the game would end. It's Venezuela looking dominant in this tournament, going undefeated in group play. Mexico was having a very lackluster tournament as they went in to face Ecuador, and if they had any chance of getting on, they had to win this game. And although both teams had chances to score, Mexico dominated the ball with 60% of it and had 20 shots. However, only 4 of those shots were on target, and they could not finally get back the net. The game ended 0-0. I mentioned Venezuela's playing Group A as they dominated the group. Ecuador had finished tied with Mexico on points. However, Ecuador had a slightly better goal differential, and they joined their South American counterpoints in the knockout stages. For Mexico, this is devastating. They went with a younger group in this tournament, and it really backfired for them. I mean, they were dealt a tough blow when they had Edison Alvarez, their captain, plays for West Ham. He got injured just 30 minutes into this tournament and had to miss the rest of the tournament. But Mexican fans cannot be happy with how they played in this tournament, especially since they're shared hosts of the 2026 World Cup. This is not the message you want to send to your fan base for that tournament. Group C play wrapped up. Bolivia taking on Panama. We already knew Uruguay was moving on with their great performance thus far, leaving a spot up for grabs between Panama and the United States. Panama took on Bolivia, and despite a scare, they did their part. Panama opened the scoring 22 minutes into the game when Jose Vajardo got the ball in the box and smashed into the net. The game stayed that way till the 69th minute when Bolivia's Bruno Miranda would get the pass and slot it home, making it 1-1. But the drama would end with 10 minutes later. Panama would respond. A cross in the box was met by Eduardo Guerrero. It would be 2-1, and Cesar Yanis would add in the game a goal to put it on ice as Panama won big, winning 3-1. So we knew that result. These games were getting played at the same time. And the United States were taking on Uruguay. They knew they had to win to have any chance. And especially with what we knew with Panama, we knew they had to win. And it was going to be a tough task. Uruguay's looked like one of the best teams in the tournament. You could see the frustration on the United States team after a scoreless first half. America was score watching a bit, and you could see Coach Greg Berhalter hold out the 1-1 motion, saying Panama and Bolivia were tied at 1. And just moments later, Uruguay would score from a free kick. The first header was saved, but the ball was then tapped in by Oliveira. The replay made it look very offsides, but VAR, maybe they had a different angle. They didn't intervene. The goal stood. The U.S. tried to get an equalizer, but couldn't find it. After the game, the frustration on the Americans, Christian Pulisic was seen motioning for the ref to go celebrate with the Uruguayan team. And then when Pulisic went in for the handshake, the ref pulled nope, and did one of these, Not a good look for footy, not a good look for respect from both parties, not a good look for sportsmanship, but that's Copa America sometime. I could see why the Americans would be disappointed, but it's a controversial goal for Uruguay that stood and decided the game, which sent the Americans home. But man, how about Uruguay? Undefeated in this group. Manager Marcelo Bielsa, he's got this team playing the best they've been in a long time. They easily cruised the Group C win, and for the U.S., wow. I thought they were getting out of this group, as many others did. It was a big surprise they finished third in this group. Their loss to Uruguay combined with that Panama win, Panama finished second in the group while USA finished third. Crazy to think that the 3 teams hosting the 2026 World Cup, only Canada's made it out of the group stage. Mexico and the U.S. did not live up to expectations. And I never want to call for anyone to lose their job, but the U.S. might need to go in another direction from Greg Berhalter. You see the American talent playing in some of the biggest leagues around the world, yet they can't seem to come together as a cohesive unit for the red, white, and stripes, the red, white, and blue, sorry. So I think they might need to go outside their country maybe, look for their next hire. I'm just glad Team USA didn't go for Jesse Marsh, who so far has looked all right in the Canada job. But we'll wrap up the group play in Group D, where Brazil took on Colombia. There wasn't a lot of drama coming into Group D final matches. We knew Brazil and Colombia were advancing, just not knowing who would finish where. The two teams faced off to decide positioning. Rafinha got Brazil off to a great start when he curled a beauty from a free kick into the net. Colombian keeper Camilo Vargas got a hand on it, but not enough to keep it out, and Brazil led after 12 minutes. But with one of the last touches of the half, Daniel Muniz was sprung from a nice pass, and he'd tie the game up. Second half would bring chances, but no goals. And with the draw, Colombia wins the group, while Brazil advances from the runner-up spot. As I mentioned, we already knew who was advancing in Group D, so Costa Rica taking on Paraguay was more of a pride on the line game. Costa Rica could not have asked for a better start. Not even 3 minutes into the game, Francisco Calvo made it 1-0. Then not even 4 minutes later, Yosimar Alcacer's low shot caught the Paraguayan keeper off guard. And just 7 minutes in, Costa Rica led 2-0. 10 minutes into the second half, Paraguay got one back. Ramon Sosa unleashed a rocket to make it 2-1. And Sequeira made huge saves down the stretch to preserve the 2-1 win for Costa Rica. Big win for them as they finished third in the group, while Paraguay failed to register any points in group play. Which brings us to the quarterfinals, the knockout stages. No round of 16 in Copa because they don't play the wild card shit. Just the top two teams of each group move on. And so who do we have? And today, Thursday, July 4th, Argentina taking on Ecuador in what should be a doozy. Ecuador haven't played their best yet in this tournament and still find themselves in the quarterfinals, but they have a tough task ahead of them, facing an unbeaten Argentina squad. And I don't think Argentina should overlook Ecuador, but in saying that, I see Argentina to win tonight. I'm guessing 2-1. Argentina in control, maybe letting Ecuador sneak one in, but that would be the first goal Argentina would allow all tournaments. So I'm not even sure if that'll happen, but I do see Argentina winning. Friday, July 5th, another. We keep saying this after each game, but the biggest game in Canadians men footy. If they keep winning, they'll keep getting bigger. They'll take on the unbeaten Venezuela side, who I've talked up on this podcast, has been playing very well this tournament. But man, some of the worst news you can get in training this week. Canada and training, Inter Milan winger Tejan Buchanan sustained an injury where he had to be taken away on ambulance. It was later announced Buchanan suffered a broken tibia and he's undergone surgery. Such a buzzkill. I hate injuries, but I really hate this one. Buchanan was not having his best tournament by any means, but when he came on the last 15 minutes of that Canada group clinching, advancing to the next stage clinching match against Chile, he played great. I was hoping he'd ride that momentum into the quarterfinal game. So again, I'm super bummed out to see him injured. Tejan Buchanan's had an amazing run going from the New England Revolution to Belgium to playing in the Serie A. Like, man, it's such a bummer. I hope he can recover and play the way he had before his injury, but the game goes on, and Canada has this tough task of facing off with Venezuela, who surprised many, including myself. No cap, as the kids say. I had Ecuador and Mexico coming out of that group, so I overlooked Venezuela a bit. I know Canada won't. They won't be going in there with fear, and I know I don't want to sound like a delusional Canadian here, but I very much feel we can win this game. The Buchanan injury is devastating, left the team in a somber mood, but there's a chance this team can rally and play for Tejan. Alphonso Davies was named the captain of this team, and this is where we'll see his captain abilities grow. I expect him to be on the pitch, leading this team, maybe to a 1-0 victory as the Maxime Crepeau wall lives up and holds another clean sheet, but I'm really excited. Make sure you try to tune in for that one. Canada could use the support there. The last quarterfinal matchup could very well be a final, Uruguay and Brazil. Uruguay's look like the best team in this tournament. I mentioned Marcelo Bielsa, an amazing manager. He's shown it everywhere he goes, and he has Uruguay playing up to their potential. Brazil hasn't lived up to those high standards yet. They've received some harsh criticisms from some legends of the team, but this Brazil team is players all over the pitch that can take over at any time, especially Vinicius Jr. He could have a game where he suddenly has a hat trick out of nowhere. I was always a Brazil fan growing up. My favorite player of all time is Ronaldo. No, not CR7, but the OG Ronaldo, lighting it up in that yellow and blue colors on the international level. But despite saying that, I see Uruguay winning this match. It's going to be one hell of a match, so make sure you tune into that one. Semifinals will go down next week, and in those matches, I see Canada setting up a rematch with their Group A other team, Argentina, and the other semifinal between Colombia and Uruguay, another South American showdown. We'll see how these picks line up in the next few days. But we'll go to the racetrack real quick. It seems a while ago, but Austrian Grand Prix went down, and just before that, Aston Martin announced they re-signed Canadian Lance Stroll on a contract extension. Don't know how I feel about that, but Max Verstappen would win the F1 Sprint, the third one of the year that went down. He was followed by the McLarens, Piastri in second and Lando in third. Max Verstappen picked up another pole position, Lando qualifying second. George Russell and Sainz sat in the second row. Oscar Piastri's time was deleted for driving outside the lines on his qualifying lap, dropping him to seventh. Charles Leclerc also went off the track, couldn't improve his time. Starting Sunday's race from the sixth spot, where Lewis Hamilton qualified 5, Sergio Perez qualified 8th. Also, big news from Team RB. Driver Yuki Tsunoda, at the end of Q1, Yuki Tsunoda alleged to have said, "These guys are fucking retarded," which you shouldn't be saying on the radio. And it led to Yuki getting summoned by the stewards, where Tsunoda received a £20,000 fine for what he said. He apologized profusely, explaining that English isn't his first language and he wasn't aware of what he was saying. Stewards appreciated the honesty, but still had to reinforce the rule. And this led to a crazy Grand Prix where shit would get wild near the end of it. Red Bull's Max Verstappen looked on pace to win another Grand Prix. But with 20 laps to go, the Red Bull pit would have an unusually long pit stop, around 6 seconds, which opened up the race a little more, leading the McLaren's Lando Norris catching up to the race leader. And the two went at it. We had some good old racing, a 5-second penalty for exceeding track limits to Lando. And Lando kept pushing, and he ended up leaving the track as Verstappen would take him out of the race. Norris was forced to retire his car after sustaining too much damage. This led to Verstappen getting a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. However, Verstappen was still able to finish the race, finishing in 5th in this race, with those race leaders effectively taking each other out. That opened the door for Mercedes' George Russell to take the race lead, and he wouldn't let go. It was funny on the radio. You could hear Toto Wolff chiming in for Mercedes. George, you can win the race. And he's like, shut up, let me fucking race. It was cool. I love that radio banter, but it was the first Mercedes F1 win since the 2022 season. Lando's McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri and Ferrari's Carlos Sainz rounded out the podium. After the race, you had two very different opinions of how that battle for first went. Max Verstappen said, "It's stuff you don't want to see happening. It's simple as that." Where Lando said, "I gave a fair, respectful, on-the-edge battle, and that's not what I got in return." Some aggressive racing here. Really ruffled some feathers, and you could see the three drivers who were on the podium watching the replay. Russell and Sainz were kind of laughing a bit, where Piastri, you could see he's miffed of what happened to his teammate. But not a long wait here. Next Sunday, July 7th, we got the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Always a fun Grand Prix on the schedule. Should be a dandy. Quick UFC 303 mention. Alex Pereira taking on Yuri Prochaska. A highly anticipated main event. Another rematch with these guys. Two big stars of the sport. Pereira knocked down Yuri in the first round and was looking ahead in the fight. Seconds in the second round, Pereira cleanly landed a left kick. Swift kick to the head, causing him to drop. He followed up with some punches. He won the match. Yuri looked in some tough shape after that one. Big win for Pereira there. Brian Ortega was set to take on Diego Lopez on the card, but had to withdraw due to illness, setting up Dan Ige to step up on a 3 hours notice. He fought his ass off. Ige, I guess, lives in Vegas. He saw the withdrawal. He threw his name in the hat and received the call while he was getting a massage. And it turned out to be a really great fight that went the distance, with Lopez winning the decision. But man, kudos to Ige stepping up last second, putting on a big fight. And Ortega wasn't the only fighter to drop off the card. The biggest one, Conor McGregor, whose comeback fight with Michael Chandler has been moved due to McGregor's injury. Jamahal Hill also picked up an injury a few weeks ago, so he couldn't fight Carlos Ulberg. Despite that, there were some big fights on that card. A lot of blood, which is always good to see, or bad to see, depending on your take on that. We'll go to the NHL here. They had their draft go down. The San Jose Sharks selected Canadian Macklin Celebrini first overall out of Boston University. He should be something else. The Chicago Blackhawks continued their young team's future growing by drafting D-man Artem Lashenov second overall. The Ducks selected big right winger Beckett Senecki third overall. Columbus went with Caden Lindstrom from Medicine Hat of the WHL, 4th overall. Montreal went to Russia with love to get Ivan Demidov, 5th overall pick. History made 6th overall pick as Utah, the Utah Hockey Club, made their first ever draft selection, selecting a player with a pretty iconic surname, Tij Aginla, son of Hall of Famer Jerome Aginla. You could see the proud on that father as his son got drafted. A lot of big names in the draft. I'm wondering who will be the best player of this draft class, but I'm not going to lie. It seems like the easy pick, but number one overall pick, Celebrini. He looks like the real deal. I'm interested to see how he does in San Jose this upcoming season. And holy crap, on a stick, did free NHL free agency get wild? I was working, so I couldn't check my phone till later, but man, the shit was going down. Some of the big names, Tampa Bay Lightning captain, or former now, Steven Stamkos. There were talks he was leaving Tampa, and after 16 years, like many country stars, he's going to Nashville to play for the Predators. Predators didn't stop there. They snagged Jonathan Marchessault from the Golden Knights, getting two guys who, to be fair, didn't really want to leave their former teams, but it's the business, baby. But Preds are getting guys with Stanley Cup experience, and they fulfilled their needs on the defensive end, getting Brady Skahey from the Carolina Hurricanes. This all happened around the same time as extending goaltender UC Saros to a long-term deal. Nashville also re-signed defenseman Alexander Carrier. I mean, these moves make the Predators looking like pretty good favorites going into the next season. We'll see. Makes you think, why didn't the Lightning keep the longtime captain Stamkos? Well, they had moves to make too. They had to give almost that same money to Victor Hedman to keep him in Tampa Bay. And they had to give Jake Gensel big money. The former Penguin had a brief cameo appearance with Carolina before coming to Tampa Bay. He should fit in well there. The recent Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers had to do some moves as well, keeping goal machine Sam Reinhart with the team on a long-term deal. They also re-signed Anton Lindell. The youngster is sticking around. He looks like a great player. Defenseman Dmitry Kulikov's also sticking in town. But being a champion means you're going to get picked up a bit. Defenseman Brandon Montour took big money to go to Seattle and join the Kraken. But the Kraken also gave big money to Saskatoon's own Chandler Stevenson. He's taking big money to leave Vegas. Back to Florida, they also lost defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson. The Swiss defenseman joined the Toronto Maple Leafs, where the Leafs are trying to bolster their defense, bringing in Chris Tanev and giving him a big contract. They also re-signed Max Domi and goaltender Joseph Wall, but a sneakier signing by the Leafs could be Panthers backup Anthony Stolarz. He didn't get tons of time behind Sergei Bobrovsky in Florida, but when he played really well. So that should be an interesting battle to see who takes their job. And this made Ilya Samsonov expendable, and he'd sign with the Golden Knights after the Knights shift off Logan Thompson to Washington for some picks. The Leafs also made those signings I mentioned earlier, but they lost some key players. Tyler Bertuzzi left the Leafs to join Chicago, who also brought Teuvo Teravainen back to Chicago. The Canucks re-signed left winger Dakota Johnson and Tyler Myers. They also made a big splash taking Jake DeBrusk from the Bruins. But the Canucks did lose some big names, ironically, to the Bruins. The Bruins signed Elias Lindholm to a big deal and Nikita Zadorov, taking two great players from Vancouver. The Stanley Cup finalists Edmonton Oilers kept some familiar faces around, re-signing Connor Brown, Adam Henrique, Matthias Janmark, and Corey Perry. They also recently signed the bought-out Jeff Skinner. He's playing with Buffalo last year, and this could be some history. Jeff Skinner has played 1,006 NHL games, never made the playoffs. And I know teams usually have hangovers after losing in the Stanley Cup, and I'm expecting the Oilers to make it back to the playoffs. So we can see Jeff Skinner in the postseason. You might have had a better chance of seeing Sasquatch until this happened. The Carolina Hurricanes lost Brady Skjei in free agency, and they were able to keep Jacob Slavin along, keeping him to a long-term deal. The Capitals signed former Kings defenseman Matt Roy to a big deal. Winnipeg Jet rental Sean Manahan left Manitoba to join the Columbus Blue Jackets. New Jersey Devils inked former Hurricanes defenseman Brett Pesce to a big deal. Montreal gave big money to right winger Juraj Slafkovsky to keep him in Montreal. The Blues gave Pavel Buchnevich a big contract. The Flyers, they bought out Cam Atkinson's huge contract. He did not fit out for Philly. He quickly joined Tampa Bay. He might have a resurgence there, but real excitement for Philly. They're signed Russian youngster Matvei Mishkov to a 3-year deal. I can't wait to see him in Flyers colors. The Red Wings made some big signings, picking up recent Stanley Cup winner with Florida Vladimir Tarasenko. They also signed Patrick Kane on a 1-year deal, and Tyler Mott. Free agency is always crazy. My NBA episode that's coming out soon, you'll hear more of that. And I almost forgot to mention the hardware in the NHL. The NHL Awards went down and the winners were announced. Colorado's Nathan McKinnon, also a guest host or a guest appearance on Trailer Park Boys years ago. He took home the Hart Trophy as MVP of the league. Winnipeg's Connor Hellebuck won the Vezina. Vancouver's Quinn Hughes took home the Norris Trophy for best defenseman. Not a bad year for Hughes, who was just appointed captain before the season started. And no real surprise for the Calder Trophy. Even after missing tons of games, Chicago's Connor Bedard led the rookies in scoring and deservedly took home the award. We're going to baseball. We'll start with the Toronto Blue Jays, the jersey I'm wearing right now. And after last week's episode, they were jumping into a 4-game series with the Bronx Bombers. The Jays could not have started the game better. They get DeCarlos Rodon early, scoring 5 runs in the first, another in the second. Combined with a Jose Barrios great performance, you had a 9-2 Jays win. Game 2, not so well for the Jays. While leading 3-1 the top of the 6th, the Yankees got 6 runs and blew the game up, adding another 7 runs in the 9th inning as the Yankees destroyed the Jays 16-5. Blue Jays reliever Tim Meza gave up 5 of those runs in the 9th, and that was the last straw for the franchise right now. He was designated for assignment the very next day, and Jose Cuis was brought up. The third game of the series, this flip-flop series played out much like the opening game. Jays were up 3-1, and they'd get 5 runs off Yankees reliever Phil Bickford in the 6th, and that changed the whole game. The Yankees would get 2 runs late off the newly promoted Jose Cuis, but the Jays would hold on to win 9-3. You had the series finale where the Jays were hoping to win this series. However, the Yankees had other ideas. They got to Kevin Gausman early and often. Gausman gave up 7 runs and 4.1 innings of play. The Yankees cruised to an 8-1, split the series. That's just kind of how the Jays have gone as of late. And a series split with the Yankees, I mean, that's not bad right now, I guess. The Jays would then host the Houston Astros in a 4-game series. The opener went the way of the visitors. Great pitching by both sides, where the game was decided by home runs, and the Astros got 2 of them. Solo bomb in the 5th inning to get a 1-0 lead. Then a 2-run blast by Yordan Alvarez in the 9th made it 3-0. The Blue Jays had Ernie Clement hit a home run to make it 3-1, but that's the way the game would end. Game 2 had more hitting, more runs, and it happened to the starting pitching. The Jays went out to a 7-0 lead in the 4th, but a 5-run 5th inning brought Houston back into it. Things got interesting late, but Toronto was able to hold on to the 7-6 win. The third match was tied up at 2 going into the 7th, but then the Astros bats woke up, especially Yordan Alvarez and Yanya Diaz. The Astros would score 4 in the 7th, 3 in the 8th, giving them a 9-2 win as they took a 2-1 series lead. The Blue Jays and Astros are playing today. Hopefully the Jays can split this series and not drop another one. And as I said, the Jays wrapped that series up today before going on a West Coast trip, starting with a 3-game series beginning Friday, July 5th, as the Seattle Mariners will host the Blue Jays. And the Mariners right now are looking to avoid a 5th straight loss and a sweep by the Orioles. Speaking of the Orioles, let's have a look at the Jays division, the AL East, where the Orioles now sit atop the division. 2-game lead over the Yankees, and the Yankees have struggled a bit, only winning 3 of their last 7, which has opened the door for the Orioles to fly right in there. Baltimore's won 3 of 4 against Texas. As Jess mentioned, they are on the verge of sweeping the Mariners. Baltimore heads in the weekend play with the Athletics out west, which they should be the favorites in, definitely. And the Yankees were swept in a 2-game stand with the Mets. They then split with the Jays, and today they look to avoid getting swept by the Cincinnati Reds. The Red Sox and Rays have been playing some pretty consistent ball, sit 8.5 and 12.5 games of the Orioles, respectively. The Blue Jays sit in the basement of the division as the only team under 500. That upcoming series with the Mariners is a big chance for the Jays to try to break free. Going to the AL Central, the Guardians still lead the way, even though Cleveland struggled a bit, giving up some ground by losing 3 of 4 to the Kansas City Royals. They did just lose to the White Sox too, which is never a good thing this season. The Twins have been sneaking up into the division, sit 6 back of Cleveland. I mentioned the big series by the Royals over Cleveland. That has them 1 back of the Twins in the Central. Tigers have struggled a bit and find themselves 8 games under 500, while the White Sox, as mentioned, haven't had a great season so far, but I can't shit on them too much. They did win a series against the Colorado Rockies, and they do have a chance to steal a series against the division-leading Guardians. We'll finish up the American League where we go out west, starting with the division-leading Mariners, and I've mentioned Seattle's recent struggles lately as they're trying to avoid a sweep with Baltimore today. Their big lead in the division has diminished as well, as there are now 2 teams in the division above 500. The Astros have been playing some great baseball lately. I mentioned their games against the Blue Jays. That wraps up today. The Astros then play the Twins on the weekend, which should be a fun series, and the rest of the AL West, all under 500. The Texas Rangers have slumped a bit, find themselves 7 games back in the Mariners. The Angels Angels have played some pretty good ball lately, but find themselves way back in the division. Then there's the basement-dwelling Oakland A's, who are struggling for wins and struggling to get people into their stadium. We'll go to the National League, where I'll start in the NL West. The Dodgers still running away with the division, 7.5 game advantage. Though they have had some slip-ups. They swept the White Sox, but they dropped 2 or 3 of the Giants. Then they get blown out by the Diamondbacks. They're on the verge of losing that series, too. This weekend should be a tasty National League matchup with the LA Dodgers hosting the Milwaukee Brewers. I mentioned the Dodgers have a big lead in the division, and it's no fault of the Padres, who have been playing pretty good lately. And they're the only other team in the NL West above the 500 mark. Diamondbacks, as mentioned, have a chance to edge out the Dodgers in that series. They haven't been playing their best ball lately, so that would be a big boost for them. They sit 10.5 games back of the Dodgers, and just a half game back of the Diamondbacks are the San Francisco Giants, who have been turning it up pretty well against tough competition lately. I mentioned that series went over the Dodgers, and the Giants have a chance to do the same against the Atlanta Braves. High peaks are in the Rockies, but not so much for this Colorado team. They're in the basement of the NL West. Their 29 wins are the lowest in the National League and the second lowest in Major League Baseball. They're just ahead of the White Sox. So we'll head to the NL Central. We'll talk about the division-leading Milwaukee Brewers, who have been playing some great baseball and have a 7-game advantage in the division. They're on the verge of winning 3 out of 4 against the Rockies. That game is this afternoon. The Brewers head to LA to take on the Dodgers, as I said, this weekend. A battle of two division leaders. Should be a great long weekend treat for our American friends. Behind the Brewers in the division, the Cardinals, the only other team above 500 in the division. The Pirates and Reds, they're neck and neck in the division, both hovering around 500. But these two teams are must-see TV. I'm spoken about the rookie pitcher and phenom, Paul Skeens, for the Pirates. He's something else to watch. A guy who's regularly throwing over 100 miles an hour. And then with Cincinnati, just YouTube Ellie De La Cruz if you haven't watched him yet. He's must-see TV. The Chicago Cubs, not so much must-see TV lately. Winners of 2 of their last 8, and they're sitting in the bottom of what has become one of the best divisions to watch in baseball this season. Wrapping up the divisional looks, we go on east to the NL East, where the Phillies have a large gap in the division, sitting 9 games ahead of the second-place Atlanta Braves. The New York Mets, sparked by the influence of McDonald's grimace, have played some better baseball of late, and they're sitting at 500. The Nationals have struggled a bit, winning only 3 of their last 10, but they called up top prospect 21-year-old James Wood, see how he performs at the major league level, and the Miami Marlins still reside in the NL East basement. But before we leave baseball, I have to mention the All-Star starters. The big game goes down Tuesday, July 16th at Globe Life Field in Texas, and the starters were just announced yesterday. In the American League, Toronto's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. made it at first base. Houston's Jose Altuve got the nod at second. Baltimore's Gunnar Henderson made it at shortstop. Cleveland's Jose Ramirez got the nod at third. In the outfield, you have 2 Yankees and a Guardian. Aaron Judge and Juan Soto represent the Bronx Bombers, while Stephen Kwan gets his first All-Star nod for the Guardians. Adley Rutschman will start as catcher, and the powerful bat of Houston's Jordan Alvarez will start at DH. In the National League squad, you got Phillies first baseman Bryce Harper starting. Ketel Marte will start at second for the Diamondbacks. Philadelphia's Trey Turner at shortstop. The third Philly starter on the team, Alec Boehm, at third base. The outfield consists of 2 Padres and a Brewer. Jurickson Profar and Fernando Tatis Jr. represent San Diego, while Christian Yelich starts for the Brewers. Fellow Brewer, William Contreras, will start at catcher, and Los Angeles Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani will start at DH. One hell of a game where the rest of the team will be announced this upcoming Sunday, July 7th. I have to talk about Wimbledon real quick. The third tennis Grand Slam has begun. The beautiful grass courts of Wimbledon, one of my favorite visits while I live there. The tournament has been off to a great start for some Canadians. A dramatic win for Denis Shapovalov, giving up a 2-set advantage but holding on to beat Danielle Altmaier in the second round. On the women's side, Bianca Andreescu beat the number 26 in the world, Linda Noskova, in straight sets of second-round play. One of Canada's best tennis players, Felix Auger-Aliassime, suffered a surprising loss to Thanasi Kokkinakanis in 5 sets. It was a tough loss for Felix. He was up 2-0 in the match, and Kokonakis won 3 straight to beat him. Not the result I was expecting by any means. You have the usual favorites on the men's side. Novak Djokovic, always in the running. Grand Slams leader. Carlos Alcaraz, he's up there. He's so exciting to watch him. You have number 1 ranked player in the world, Jannik Sinner. This could go to a lot of different players right now. There's not one sure winner in this Wimbledon bracket. On the women's side, we have some big time absences. The first time at Wimbledon since 1996 where you will not have either Serena or Venus Williams. That's amazing. They've been so dominant for so long. Really feel blessed to have been born at this time where I got to watch them play regularly. Something amazing that's really going to be missing from this tournament. Other big absences include some Belarusian players, Arina Sabalenka and Victoria Azarenka, both withdrawn from this tournament. This opens the door for Coco Gauff to really win the tournament. She's got to be the favorite, but you can't count out the tour. There are some players that could jump up any day, could beat her, Ons Jabber, other stars like that. But this is where I think Canadian Bianca Andreescu, she's been working on her comeback. She won the U.S. Open back in 2019. That seems a bit ago now. That's 5 years, but I'm thinking this is where Bianca Andreescu will go on a run and she'll win Wimbledon, adding a second Grand Slam to her resume. At least I hope so. We'll go to the CFL quick, where Week 4 kicked off with an exciting game. The Lions came out in a slugfest, beating the Edmonton Elks 24-21 as the Elks moved to 0-4 on the season. A battle of unbeaten teams. You had Montreal wide receivers Cole Spiker and Tyson Philpott, each catching touchdown passes as Montreal gave the Argonauts their first loss of the season, winning 30-20 as Montreal moved to 4-0 on the season. Calgary, there's a wild game between the Stamps and the Blue Bombers, a close one that went to overtime, and in the extra frame, Calgary's Rennie, great name, Paredes would kick the game winner, giving the Stamps a 22-19 win. Calgary moved to 2-1 on the season, while the Blue Bombers moving to 0-4. Yikes. Week 4 capped off with Hamilton traveling to Ottawa, a battle between the Ticats and the Red Blacks. Went down the wire where the Red Blacks made better plays in the fourth quarter to hold on to win 24-22. Hamilton, they've been in games, but they haven't win games this year as they dropped to 0-4 on the season. The Saskatchewan Roughriders had a bye in Week 4, but they received some tough news. Starting quarterback Trevor Harris was placed on the 6-game injured list with an MCL injury. Another knee injury for Harris in the CFL. The next man up for the Riders tonight as they host the Argonauts. The 3-0 Riders will look to stay unbeaten as backup quarterback Shea Patterson will get his first CFL start. I'm hoping the Riders pull this off here and give the Argos back-to-back defeats. It's been a long episode. Let's keep the short a little short. Being that it's Independence Day in America, down to America, and that Canada just had our celebrations July 1st, Happy Canada Day, it makes me think of fireworks. Now, I've never had a JPP moment, thank God, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google Jason Pierre-Paul's hand. That's fireworks awareness right there. But I've seen some cool fireworks celebrations over my life, from cool ones in Banff to my boy Brad shooting some out of his butt. One fireworks show that really jumps out in my memory was at my buddy Todd's family cabin. Him and his brother Cobra, they went out and they lit up all these fireworks. They were lined up to celebrate Canada. We had our drunk Toad running up and down, lighting them all up. It was crazy. It was a really good show, and I remember laughing because it looked like a war movie. They'd be lighting them up in different patterns, and Toad be yelling, "Dive, dive, dive!" It was a super drunk and funny event, as most long weekends are. And one fireworks show I'll never forget. It was a surprise war reenactment at the same time with some really cool people. Great times, and that's what long weekends are all about. And there you have it, episode 68 finally out. Another one, as DJ Khaled would say. But thanks again for tuning in, catching up on the week. Lots of good sports. Like I said, you got the Europas wrapping up. You got the Copas wrapping up. Wimbledon in full form. Lots of good stuff out there. And I know I love sports and preach it, but try to get outside too. With the powers of the internet, we can rewatch this stuff. You might not sleep. Sleep, right? But anyway, thanks again for coming out. My WNBA recap just came out if you needed to catch up on WNBA. And that NBA one is coming where I just break down the breakdowns. But thanks again for coming out. Ren City out.